If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address.
This was a game-changing debate in the sense that right now, as we speak, there is a deep, a wide, and a very aggressive panic in the Democratic Party. It started minutes into the debate, and it continues right now. It involves party strategists, it involves elected officials, it involves fundraisers. And they're having conversations about the president's performance, which they think was dismal, which they think will hurt other people down the party in the ticket, and they're having conversations about what they should do about it. Some of those conversations include, should we go to the White House and ask the president to step aside? Other of the conversations are about, should prominent Democrats go public with that call? Because they feel this debate was so terrible.
If anybody in America thinks that was even close to being an okay debate by Joe Biden, I'm living in a parallel universe. That was an unmitigated disaster for President Biden from the second he walked out to the closing statement. The biggest issue for Democrats is abortion, and he couldn't give an answer. He gave an answer, he couldn't even give a coherent answer on the biggest issue for Democrats tonight.
I'll give you the analysis. You kind of have the old man versus the con man. I can walk you through how I'm supposed to see it and say it, but I just want to speak from my heart. I love that guy. That's a good man. He loves his country. He's doing the best that he can. But he had a test to meet tonight to restore confidence of the country and of the base, and he failed to do that. And I think there's a lot of people who are going to want to see him consider taking a different course now. We're still far from our convention, and there is time for this party to figure out a different way forward if he will allow us to do that.
It's a great political strength of Joe Biden is his resilience and his stubbornness. Yeah. It's also sometimes a blind spot because he is so stubborn. It's going to be very hard to someone, and I don't know who it is, who could go to Joe Biden and say, you need to do this.
Oh, the puns and quips have been coming in hard and heavy since the Great Debate, or as many people have been calling it, the Great Debasement. For many months now, we've been hearing about whether or not Trump will or will not engage in a debate, and the white media spin on it, at least from the white left, has been, well, surely Trump's not going to, especially with all of his legal woes. They were thinking that this was going to be acting as a deterrent for him. After all, he doesn't want to answer any tough questions about it. Give me a break. Trump already established that he was pretty much scandal-proof for years now. But they were putting this false narrative out there that Donald Trump didn't want to take part in the debate. Not really. He was trying to find a way out of it. Some excuse, he shouldn't have to do it. That's what they were saying for the longest time. And in the end, he said yes. But then again, when has Donald Trump actually shied away from a camera? The man doesn't do that, especially not in these circumstances. He's known for the longest time that Joe Biden was pretty much cognitively on his last legs, and the debate pretty much sealed the deal on that one. Because now that they've actually had the debate, all of that talking about how Donald Trump didn't want to be there, it's turned on its head. Everybody's forgotten all about that. And they've also forgotten about Trump's legal problems too. Those narratives have been completely overshadowed by the fact that the country is now presented with a prospect far worse than having a morally deranged pervert in the White House who may or may not be in the hip pocket of the Chinese and the Russians. They're looking at a president who basically at this point is senile beyond belief. Man can't even form a coherent sentence, and it's been put on display for the whole world to see. Even folks over in Britain and France and elsewhere who might be to the left or center, they're looking and going, this is a problem. And the white media, who have been trying to pretend as if there was some sort of horse race going on between these two, now they're looking and going, looks like one of the horses broke a leg. The denial had been on overdrive for years now. The people who have been covering for Biden and talking about how Trump's various legal losses were going to spell disaster for him, they're now in full-blown panic mode. Because that's what all of these legal fights with Trump were about. It was about weakening the man, trying to undermine him as much as possible before the debate. This is just the white left doing their own form of lawfare and political warfare. They weren't doing it for black people's benefit. They were doing it for their own. And of course, you had the empty-headed pundit class like Joe Scarborough, who were talking about how, Trump, I don't see how he gets elected. Yeah, but after that debate, you got Scarborough looking totally depressed. This has been part of the strategy to try to find a way to bypass the black vote. Go ahead and talk about immigration. Go ahead and talk about abortion. We'll hammer the drum on that. Yeah, and how much good has that done them? Those things got blown out of the water in an instant. The first of the post-debate polls have come out, and it shows that Biden was the one who should have been terrified to go into that debate. He was already underwater with his poll numbers, and now he's officially upside down. A month ago, only 35% of respondents said that he had the mental and cognitive health to be president. That's bad. After the debate, that number has now fallen to only 27%. So that means that basically only 1 out of 4 Americans, according to this poll, actually believe that Joe Biden still has the mental and cognitive health to serve as president. Now, once you get under 40% with America's electorate, that basically means that you've burned past whatever the rock-solid Democrat or Republican base happens to be. In America, that's how it works. About 35 to 40% of Americans basically are Republicans. You can't talk them into anything else. They're just basically Republicans. And the same thing goes for the Democrats. Roughly 35 to 40% of Americans are rock-solid Democrats and aren't going to vote for Republicans no matter what. All of the $500 million that goes into these presidential campaigns is mostly meant to sway that other 20% or so of the electorate, to get them to change their minds, because they're the only ones who all that propaganda could potentially affect. This is showing that Biden's already burned himself way down past that 40%. He is now in trouble. And as far as those who said that he didn't have the cognitive ability to serve as president, that number was already at 65%, 3 out of 5 a month ago. Now it's over 70%. But of course, Trump is only 3 years younger than Biden, if the word young can be used to describe either one of them. In a poll comparing both Trump to Biden, he's seen as having nearly double the number of respondents saying that he had the mental and cognitive ability to be president compared to Biden. And among those who said that he didn't have the same cognitive ability as Biden, his number was still dozens of points better than Biden on that front. Keep in mind, the debate didn't get that much as far as viewership goes. It was hardly a blockbuster event. It was not must-see TV. Imagine, though, how much higher these numbers would have been if more people had actually been watching. Now, I and probably a couple of others have been telling you for years now, and especially since these lawsuits finally got rolling against Trump, this was not going to matter to Trump's base. And truth be told, if Biden wasn't able to actually address the kitchen table issues, the pocketbook issues that were facing the American people, if he wasn't able to do anything about the cost of living crisis, which I told you is actually a cost of housing crisis, if he couldn't do anything about that, or in his case refused to do anything about that because the big donors wouldn't like it, then what's going to happen is Donald Trump was basically going to be able to coast back to the White House on a red wave of voter apathy. And that's where things stand now, or at least that's where they stood before the debate. Now apathy has turned into full-blown anxiety. And it was all completely predictable, or at the very least completely pathetic. See, the Democratic pundits and the commentators on the left, these people have been spending years trying to put up some sort of rhetorical hedge for Biden, something they could use to explain away the man's obvious, excruciatingly blatant deficiencies. What they've been trying to do is their own version of Ronald Reagan's famous debate zinger when he was talking about Walter Mondale and he said that he wouldn't hold his opponent's youth and inexperience against him. Never mind the fact that Walter Mondale was already a middle-aged man, close to elderly at that point. Ronald Reagan was already elderly, and the man's brain had been turning to jello for many years, but that was how Ronald Reagan preemptively dealt with any would-be attacks on his advanced age, because he'd been already hearing it for years that he was too old to be president, and that's how he decided to wave it off, saying, I'm going to go ahead and get in some jokes, because, the white media loves it when an old white man tells some old quips, and he was able to do that, and it worked. Problem is, that's not going to work with Biden. Biden can't even speak at this point. He's sitting there talking. I would love to say it sounds like the Crypt Keeper, but the Crypt Keeper sounds like Barry White compared to Biden. And the way that he ambled, though shuffled is more like it, onto that stage, the man can barely talk. He can barely walk at this point. This is not somebody who instills confidence. But then again, I guess his handlers were thinking if we can just get him through the debate without him falling out from exhaustion, because that's how he sounded. He didn't need cue cards. What he needed was a nap. But this is what the Democrats chose to do. And no matter what the pundits may be telling you, there's an elephant in the room that nobody wants to have to deal with. They keep talking about, how the Democratic Party structure is, that's what brought us to this, and all this other garbage. There's something that nobody wants to have to talk about, and that's the reason why you need the black media. The problem here is bigger than just Biden's advanced age. The reason that the Democrats are in full-blown panic is not merely because of his catastrophic performance. The reason they can't do anything about it is Kamala Harris. See, Kamala's the problem. She's the entire reason that they're panicking. There wouldn't be an issue at all if they had somebody that they had confidence in as the vice president. But the thing about it was, they don't have confidence in Kamala Harris. And that's the reason why they're sitting here going, what are we going to do? You can't tell Joe Biden to resign the presidency. Because you're guaranteeing at that point that the outcome would be the same no matter what. You can only tell Biden to resign the presidency if you're able to present something better. Kamala Harris dang sure ain't better than Biden. Bringing in Gavin Newsom to replace Biden isn't possible, not without an election. The rules of succession in the Constitution don't allow for the vice president to just be passed over. You have to hold an election for that. And for that to happen, that means Gavin Newsom or Elizabeth Warren or whatever white person they would want to put in there would have to go to the Democratic Convention. And for the first time in decades, the convention wouldn't be a coronation. It would have to be an actual convention where the delegates would have to decide whether Newsom or whomever is going to be the nominee. That's the problem. How do you tell Kamala Harris we're intentionally passing you over? Because that's what they're doing. They're trying to figure out how do we do that without actually having to say it. I mean, it's all so blatant. They're trying not to say it. It's excruciatingly obvious they don't want to have to say Kamala Harris can't be the nominee. They're sitting here talking about Biden, his age. What do we do? Who's going to run? Oh my God, what about the convention? That's because nobody wants to have to say Kamala Harris can't be the nominee. That's the entire problem. How do you skip over Kamala Harris, which is what they want to do? Now, this is a reality that I've been talking about since at least 2017 when I did my now classic video, The Deadly Deception of Kamala Harris. When it was obvious to me that this would-be political upstart from California was desperately trying to remake Barack Obama's presidential roadmap formula. She was going to try to walk in his footsteps. It was obvious to me that's exactly what she was trying to do, and she went ahead and ran that playbook line by line, and it failed for her. But it did at least get her some attention as far as she's concerned. Oh, I'm only a heartbeat away from the presidency. Truth be told, given her low amount of charisma, no ideas, and very little personality, she might as well be a million miles away. This is the reason that Kamala Harris is not being talked about. They're terrified. They should be. As the black media has been telling you for years, the only reason Kamala Harris was even put on the ballot was for one reason and one reason only, to try to get the votes of black women. See, that's one of the primary drivers of who gets selected to be the vice presidential running mate. The reason why is, if you're running for the presidency, you need a vice president who can garner you some votes that you may not be able to get on your own. That was why Barack Obama chose an old white guy, an old racist white guy like Joe Biden to be his running mate. Barack Obama had a number of political deficiencies among white voters, specifically with white men. They definitely did not want to have to vote for him if they thought they had a viable alternative. That's why he had a white guy, an old white guy, one of them, on his ballot as the vice president. Somebody they could look at and see themselves. And that's why Joe Biden was helpful to Barack Obama, because he's from Scranton, Pennsylvania. He could go to those fellow racists and say, oh, there's this black guy over here. He's clean and articulate, and he doesn't mind when I call him colored. That's what Joe Biden was put on the ballot for. And he served his purpose. Barack Obama wanted to go ahead and get those white male votes, specifically white folks out there in the heartland, and it worked. As for Kamala Harris, there's still no evidence that putting her on the ballot helped him out at all. Sure, there may have been some enthusiasm from the ski-wee contingent, the same clowns who failed to help Kamala Harris win even one primary or even be competitive in any primary races. But the truth of the matter is, when the black voters turned out in 2020, they didn't do it because they liked Kamala Harris. I showed you time and again, every time Kamala Harris went in front of black folks, they booed her. They did not like this woman. The reason that Joe Biden was able to get those black votes regardless was because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump's nonstop antagonism of the black vote, that made it where all those black folks who stayed home in 2016 because they were disgusted with the deliberate betrayal and failure of the Obama years, they were so antagonized by Trump they decided to turn out. Trump was the one who turned out the black vote in 2020, not Kamala Harris. Now, the problem for the Democrats is when you got these little black would-be boule Negroes running around, especially if you got these black sorority types and such, these are inventions of white power. So they're being bitten in the behinds by their own little inventions, the ski-wee contingent. This little group of harpies, they're hell-bound and determined that they want a black woman from their sorority circle specifically to become president, especially after Obama. As far as they're concerned, you're not going to have a black man be president, even if he's only biracial. You have to have a black woman in there because we want some validation. That's what the ski-weers are saying. They're looking for validation. They want validation that shea butter still matters, apparently. The ski-wee contingent, the shea butter crowd, they were declaring early on, back when the white media was taking potshots at Kamala's communication blunders and her general incompetence back in the early days of the administration, The shea butter crowd made it clear that if the Democrats are starting to think that they should dump Kamala or otherwise sideline her, well, the shea butter gang, they'll put down their hair extensions, their fake fingernails, and their buckets of Haagen-Dazs just long enough to say that they're not going to turn out to vote. Never mind the fact that they're not going to make any sort of substantive difference to the outcome of the election, but the truth of the matter is Biden's political situation is precarious, to say the least. He really doesn't need anybody who's actually breaking away from them. And even though the ski-wee contingent doesn't make or break an election, the truth of the matter is he still needs some votes from them anyway. He can't really afford for them to be running out. So while the joke is on them because there's not enough of them to win even one primary, for the Democrats, the problem is that there's no way around Kamala Harris, at least not one that doesn't involve her also having to resign the presidency the moment that she gets it. Putting Joe Biden on the ticket 4 years ago was a reckless gamble by the Democrats because he was already having severe cognitive problems that were apparent as early as the second term of the Obama administration. You see, the white media loves to cover for certain folks, especially white politicians and such. If he was black, they would have been already calling him over the hill, senile. They would have said, oh, this guy should have been out of politics a long time ago. But, he's got the complexion for the protection. So all of his stupid stuff and his ramblings, and clearly this guy was absent-minded, they just called it gaffes. Oh, well, Joe Biden, he's a gaffe machine. No, he wasn't a gaffe machine. The man was going through the outer stages of senility. That was the real reason for all the stupid stuff that Biden said. That and, of course, his inherent racism. But the fact that this man was not able to actually express himself, that wasn't because he was inartful. It was because of the fact that the man's mind was already going then. His gray matter was already turning to mush. Remember, there's a reason that the Democrats passed over Biden for Hillary in 2016. There's a reason why they said, well, naturally the vice president would be the next one in line to pursue the presidency because he's already in the White House and he's got the power of incumbency behind him. But the problem was Biden was already understood back in 2016 to be way too old to be running for president. People already looked at the numbers and said, forget it, you can't run Biden, that's for sure. And the Democrats, being the Democrats, they didn't bother to cultivate a field of contenders like the Republicans do. So when 2020 came around, they were desperate to get somebody on that ballot who had some name recognition, and Biden was pretty much the only game in town. Now, had he run against anyone other than Trump, he would have lost, like he did all those other abortive attempts he made at being president. And keep in mind, even then, were it not for COVID, he would have lost. But Biden beat the odds and he managed to win. And when he did, the Democrats should have been eyeing an exit strategy to have him resign no later than mid-2022. But that brings us back to the real problem, doesn't it? What do you do about Kamala Harris then? Once Biden has gone ahead and said, I think I'm going to go golfing. When he inevitably goes face down in a bowl of his own oatmeal, what are you going to do about Kamala Harris? Because you don't want to pass the keys to the White House over to her. Getting rid of Biden means Kamala automatically assumes the presidency, and when she does, how do you remove her before the 2024 election? I keep hammering that point because that's something the white media is not telling you, and that's the entire problem. That's the real problem. Now, Gavin Newsom's been spending years trying to position himself for a presidential run. That's the reason why he had that little spitball fight going with Ron DeSantis. It was obvious to everybody that he wasn't going to go the distance. But even so, Gavin Newsom's 1,000-watt smile, his perfectly coiffed hairdo, and his professional BS artist routine won't make leapfrogging Kamala Harris look like anything other than a dysfunctional political party. The Democrats were hoping to themselves that if they just have the proper handlers and if they just keep Biden out of sight for the most part and don't let him do too many public appearances, maybe they'll be able to slither their way past the election. And there's certainly precedent for it from the Democrats. They did it with FDR, but FDR's problem was that he was physically crippled by polio. The problem wasn't that the man's mind was crippled, just his body. Biden doesn't have that going for him. See, with FDR, you could go ahead and limit his public appearances to being driven around town, chauffeured from place to place, and you could also do a lot of quote-unquote fireside chats, because you ain't getting in front of the camera too often. You can get away with that for Roosevelt, just have the man do radio instead of TV. That won't work with Biden. And yet, even now, even with the man circling the toilet bowl, even with his would-be campaign for re-election crashing and crumbling down around his ears, even with the Democratic hierarchy and their well-wishers in the white media running for cover and panicking in their boots, Biden is still not coming to the black base of the party and saying, here's what I'm going to do for you. Even now, neither he nor any of these pundits dare say that. Even now. Democracy's on the ballot. Oh my God, Biden, he's crazy as hell, or at least he's senile beyond words. Yeah, but they're not coming to black voters and saying we got to shore up that black support. Far as they're concerned, that's not an option. So if coming to the black vote with tangibles is not an option for them, why the hell should voting for Biden be an option for us? So his cognitive decline has presented the Democrats with a huge problem, one that presents no good options. The only way that Biden can actually win this fight, or at least put the odds in his favor, is if he's already got a constituency who are rock solid behind him and they don't care about his age or even his cognitive ability because it's irrelevant. How do you have a constituency like that? Well, just ask the donor class. You know, the big money donors, the people who make those huge contributions. See, they don't care if Biden or any of those politicians are senile. In fact, they actually prefer that these people be old and over the hill and half crazy because that makes them easier to handle. It means that after these people hand over the national treasury to the 1%, these guys will have forgotten that they even did it 5 minutes from now. See, that's a constituency that's going to go ahead and support them no matter what, because being mentally impaired is actually a good thing for them. This is what Biden and the Democrats should have been spending the last 4 years doing where black voters are concerned, the party base. You go ahead and make sure that those people are taken care of. Then it wouldn't matter if Biden is half crippled and crazy. They'd say, well, you know what? He's going to keep doing right by us. And as far as we're concerned, as long as this man understands what side his bread's buttered on, it doesn't matter. They'll be saying that Trump is the one who's crazy. Trump's the one who's mentally unfit. That's politics in the real world. And for too long, the Democrats have been trying to create their own little bubble and furnish that bubble with all kinds of self-aggrandizing media fantasies. But that bubble got popped in front of the whole world. Biden's would-be boosters and supporters, the people who were saying, what, him worry? All of those people who are putting forward one line of rhetoric after the next to dismiss the reality, here they are quaking in their boots, running for cover, going, oh my God, it's worse than we thought. You know, I've been wondering where all the Biden bots are at now. The people who are saying vote for Biden no matter what. Yeah, these people, they're also in hiding more than Biden's been. These are the fools who go lurking in the comments section, thinking that they're being sneaky, trying to slip in all sorts of garbage, saying, you have to invest in this election. Too many people done died. Yeah, and Biden and the Democrats sat on their hands and let these people get killed. Well, it's our duty to care about the outcome. Democracy's on the ballot. We have to make a choice. Well, you take a look at this debate performance. You got crazy and corrupt. What kind of choice is that? And that being the case, I think it's safe to say now that the only ones whose mental and cognitive health is worse than Biden's are the people who decided to blindly follow him. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Lisa Taylor, Charles Reed, Jerome Simmons, Stephen 12, and Dondi Waddell. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.